Hi, I'm Susie Morgan, founder and director of training at Precision EMDR Academy. And today what I want to talk about is something pretty serious. It's what makes EMDR therapy unsafe and ineffective. And on the flip side, what can make it safe and effective? And a lot of those things that I have discovered in 20 years of doing this work that really make the difference. And most of all, make the difference if you, as a therapist, have eyes to see what you need to see up front through those initial preparation and history gathering exercises so that you can modify strategically what you're doing to meet the needs of the specific client that is sitting with you. And the saddest thing that I hear, or the most concerning thing, is when I get calls from potential clients who say, I've done EMDR therapy and it really just, it kind of made things worse. I really decompensated afterwards. I was a lot more symptomatic, or it just felt like it didn't move very much, or it felt disorganized, or my therapist didn't know where to go next when I know I have all this stuff I'm still struggling with. And so I just think it's really important to have an understanding of what are those key components that really help us know what a person's brain or nervous system has the capacity to do in relationship to memory processing being safe and effective when we jump into it. And of course, we can't totally see the future, so we can't 100% guarantee to a client or to ourselves that, yes, if I proceed with trauma memory reprocessing, this will be safe, this will be effective. But I really, really do think we can have eyes to see a lot up front before we even jump into the woods of the trauma memories themselves. So I really think of this in terms of readiness and two primary aspects of readiness: what the client's brain and nervous system are ready to do, and how do we see that? And then on the other side, are we ready? Do we have a good kind of conceptualization of where we're going to go and why? And also what blocks we might run into along the way because this is complex developmental trauma, let's say. And so I just want to kind of give you a view of each of those things. So thinking of readiness and the things that we need to be looking for up front with regards to the client's capacities. So what we're looking at here, first and foremost, is our first most critical thing that can lead to unsafe trauma memory processing is inadequate assessment of dissociation. Now, historically, most EMDR trainings have really just introduced the DES, which is a quick assessment that is really a screening measure for dissociative symptoms. And the difficulty with that particular measurement tool is, number one, when I was trained 20 years ago, literally, that was the assessment tool we were using. And our field has grown, our knowledge base has grown, and yet that's still the assessment tool that we're giving out. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We've learned a lot more since then, and there's a lot more really useful tools we can use to really see what we need to see. So first of all, the problem with the DES is it asks questions in a way that I think experientially for my clients has raised sort of like their hackles a bit, where they're on guard if they do have dissociative symptoms because they think, oh, you're going to think I'm schizophrenic, or you're going to think I'm this or that. And so they go more into hiding about their symptoms, as opposed to if we introduce it in a safer way, in a way that's more normalizing, in a way that's really, really honoring the fact that brains that are using dissociative symptoms to manage trauma are really doing something sophisticated. And it just means we're going to need to do something sophisticated in return so that their treatment is safe and effective. And we may or may not be trained to do so. So we need to be assessing this. That is what we need to be communicating, not just here's this questionnaire. It asks questions that if I say yes to them, that might signal to you something that, you might think something bad about me, something like that. So we have a visitor. Very helpful. So basically what we need to be doing is we need to be assessing this in a way that makes it safe for our clients to tell us what we need to know so that we can modify the treatment. And so I think having a questionnaire or a process that is more of a conversation where we are really asking about specific types of the spectrum of dissociative symptoms. And like I said, couching it in this language that says, this is safe for you to tell me it's okay. It's actually a really just, normal way for a brain and a nervous system to respond to abnormal circumstances that they shouldn't have gone through, really invites a different type of level of disclosure, as well as helps us really know what we need to know. Because if we have a client who has derealization and depersonalization only, we're going to be doing something very different than that if they have parts of self who have a first person perspective, and how much memory loss they have or time loss in real time or things like that make a tremendous difference. And if we don't get adequate information, we could rush into trauma memory reprocessing, have a client's brain break down those dissociative barriers, flood them with information that they're not ready for, and that can cause decompensation and high levels of symptomatology, and it's not okay. So the problem with the DES, I think, is that it invites the client to hide some of those things from us because of the way it asks the questions. And in addition, a lot of the therapists entering EMDR training don't have prior training in dissociation. And so it really doesn't help them know what they need to know. And it only asks a few questions that really have clinical kind of significance. And so we need to know other tools, and they are out there. So that's a big piece. And so if we are working with clients with EMDR, we need to know enough about the spectrum of dissociative symptoms so that we can ask what we need to ask and treat accordingly, or know if it's out of our scope, or know if we, it's close enough within our scope and we want to learn that so we can go get adequate training and consultation to treat our clients safely and effectively. So the other aspect that we need to really be looking at with readiness is a whole series of capacities. And what I think here is really important to understand is we can absolutely be using our typical preparation and history gathering processes to see simultaneously, while we're gathering that information or giving our clients those tools, we can see what we need to see in terms of their brain's capacities. So without going into all of the aspects of readiness in this little talk, because it really doesn't have the scope to be able to go into all of this, I just want to give you a couple examples. So for instance, we're doing calm, place, and container. That's, those are some of the classic things that we know to do when we're starting an EMDR session with a client. And so we start to see this client have, maybe their calm place is on a beach and there's sharks that are invading the beach, or there's a giant storm with lightning that's coming and that sort of thing. And so we invite them to do something like create a force field, do something magical to kind of like protect this space from those, invading, dark pieces. And what happens is their brain just resists that. So nope, more sharks are coming. Now there's sharks and a storm, that sort of thing. Well, that's information. It's not just about the calm place in that moment. It's actually about the information that says, it's not okay for this client to have state change. It's not okay for them to feel calm. That is critical. We will need to address that before we can safely and effectively process trauma, because we need their brain to be able to do state change. We need their brain to be able to activate the trauma memories and then allow that adaptive information to come in and allow those trauma memories to be neutralized. So that's just an example. Another might be that they're doing the exercises we're asking them to do, but they're actively sort of staying in the driver's seat rather than the passenger seat and just like allowing their brain to do what it does. and let whatever happens happen, like we say. Instead, they're staying in the driver's seat and they're like they're thinking really hard about the next thing, that sort of thing. That shows us that they're not yet engaging in following their brain, which is a capacity and a willingness we need them to have in order for the trauma memory processing to be effective. If they are really just in, like overthinking where this is supposed to go next, am I doing this right? That sort of thing, that's going to get in the way of allowing their brain to let whatever happens, travel down those channels of associations and effectively wipe out all of that kind of really, difficult trauma memory material and integrate what is really useful from their adaptive information resources. So these are just some examples of things that we want to really have an idea of. Okay, these are the capacities I need to see, and I can use my preparation and history gathering process at the beginning to be watching for those things. And then we can be communicating with our clients that say, this is why we're waiting a bit to jump into trauma memory reprocessing. I need to help build up your capacity with you for state change. I need to work with what's in the way of it being okay to feel calm. Or we need to come up with a process that allows you to sit back, relax, and not enjoy the show, but let it proceed, follow your brain, let whatever happens happen in your thought process, your nervous system, all of that while we're trauma memory reprocessing. And we can't safely proceed until we do that, because otherwise what I'll be doing is I'll be opening up a trauma memory network, activating it in your nervous system, and then we'll get stalled out and you'll feel worse, not better. And that's not okay. So if we can see these things up front, then we can do something in advance and we can actively help our clients understand what we're doing and why, and how they can help the process be able to move forward more safely, more effectively. And so that's actually a big component of what we treat with Precision EMDR. And that's that precision piece is we're really looking at this as like personalized medicine, personalized mental health. And that we really want to see our particular client's capacities before we do any of this, so that we can very surgically make changes to what we're doing to meet their needs so that things are safe and effective for them, rather than we just get blindsided once we're already into the work. So that's really looking at that idea of the client's capacities for readiness, and then, or readiness as reflected by the client's capacities and how we can build those things up. The flip side is also, are we ready? Do we have a good, solid case conceptualization? And I really think our jobs, especially with complex developmental trauma, which is that, that more typical client presentation that we see. We don't typically see single event PTSD. Instead, what we tend to see are just layers of trauma throughout a client's life, beginning with unmet developmental attachment needs, and then all sorts of things that happen to them that they didn't need to have happen to them. And those can be those big T traumas, blood and fire, that sort of thing, abuse, all of that. Or they can be things like adverse life events, those things that wouldn't meet criteria A of the DSM, but definition of PTSD, but they would leave a mark. They did cause a mark. And so basically what we're needing to do is we're needing to treat those. We're needing to treat the traumas that occurred for these clients because they have the layers of them, but then we're also needing to treat attachment. And so if you're familiar at all with our tree metaphor, we picture in Precision EMDR, the trauma memory networks as these dark trees. And then we have this large light tree of adaptive information. And the imagery we use is that the trunk of that tree of adaptive information is really built through the attachment experiences. And so a lot of our clients who are coming in who have these layers of dark trees, they also have a spindly trunk in their early attachment. And so what I really see as our jobs is not just to treat these trauma memory networks, but equally to engage in shoring up this trunk of this light tree, because that is what helps the client stand when the winds are blowing. That is what I think helps create the most resilience to the traumas and the adverse life events really getting stuck and causing symptoms for our client. So if you want to know more about those images, there's actually a free video on the precisionemdr.com website, and it's under self-help, and it's called Understanding EMDR Therapy, and it's free. You register for it, but then you have free access to the course. It's 45 minutes, and it's all trees, and it is really illustrating how EMDR therapy works, and really how these memory networks, both the negative and the positive ones, really are critical for understanding the connection between our client's symptoms, triggers, and trauma memory networks, as well as what we need to be aware of and looking at in our treatment conceptualization. So what we need to be doing, I think, for our clients, like I said, these ones where we have these various layers of trauma and unmet attachment needs, is we really need to have the lay of the land up front. We really need to know, okay, what is comprising my client's adaptive information tree? Do they have that spindly trunk, or do they have, maybe a spindly trunk, but a lot of adult adaptive information resources that have been developed out, and what kinds do they have? And specifically, do they counter the trauma memory networks that we see? Because that's really critical. And so we need to know kind of the lay of the land of that that adaptive information tree and what we've got going on there, because some of our clients have a lot of adaptive information in their adult life, but have that spindly trunk, and some really have a spindly adaptive information tree overall. And this is where that safety issue comes in. If our client has an adaptive information tree that is spindly overall, we cannot safely proceed without shoring that up significantly. Otherwise, we will destabilize that client. So we need to be assessing for that up front. It's critical. In addition, if a client has a spindly trunk, there are blocking beliefs that we can predict. There are going to be things that are sort of rules that have been developed out of those early attachment experiences that say it's not okay to feel certain things. It's not okay to acknowledge certain things, that sort of thing. And those are going to get in our way. So the more that we know what's going on over here, the more we're going to be able to safely treat our clients, but also effectively treat our clients, because we can see already before we even start the things that are going to get in our way, and even start prepping for that already and help working with our clients to feel those feelings, acknowledge those things, that sort of thing, or know that they'll need to. And we can have a sense of like, okay, I'm going to need to do this interweave. I'm probably going to need to do that type of interweave before we even get in there. That's going to make us way more effective, way more efficient, actually. So the other thing we need to do is, I think we really need to know what trauma memory trees are there. We really need to know, okay, are we dealing with a trauma memory network around I'm unlovable? Are we dealing with a trauma memory network around I'm unsafe? And on top of that, what are those adaptations, those strategies our clients have developed in order to manage those trauma memory networks if they have that early developmental trauma? So it's, I must please everyone in order to be lovable, or I must freeze and submit in order to be safe, or whatever the case might be. So the more we have that all mapped out in advance, the more we can work with our clients to determine, where do we need to start? What are we going to do? And how are we going to proceed, rather than just willy-nilly go into this forest and just start doing some random tree trimming, because that might reduce our client's symptoms, sure, but it also might be feel relatively ineffective overall. And also it can, if we didn't know what was going on with that light tree and all of that, actually lead to destabilization. So I've covered a lot of ground in this talk, but this is something that is really critical in my mind for why I even created Precision EMDR in the first place, is because there is so much we can be doing to make EMDR safe and effective. And so I think it's really critical that we do those things. We know how to do those things. We have eyes to see what we need to see, procedures for assessing what we need to assess. And then we have game plans that our clients are entirely engaged in and in the loop about, so that they can actively participate in their care and help us do it more safely and effectively for them. So thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. Shoot me an email. Visit our pages on Facebook or on Instagram, which is at Precision EMDR, and ask questions or tell me your thoughts on all of this. And if this is something that you want more training in, you have options. So we have that free course that I mentioned, the Understanding EMDR free self-help course that's available for clients as well as for clinicians. It doesn't matter either way. And then we also have advanced courses in EMDR training that cover the Precision EMDR methodology for readiness, for target sequence planning, for assessing all of these different things, gathering history that's really relevant to that adaptive information tree, that trunk quality, that sort of thing. So we have all that available for in the advanced EMDR training form, but we also have EMDR basic trainings so that you can, this is your first time learning EMDR, you can learn this methodology from the start. You learn Francine Shapiro's traditional model. Absolutely. We don't change that up, but we give you all of this to surround it and to help make your process with using standard EMDR, protocol and Francine's method in a safe and effective way for your clients. So I'd love for you to join us, and thank you so much for listening today.